at this. What have you done to be talking to Caitlin Clark? You ain't done nothing, Stephanie White. You a trash-ass coach. Look at this. Crashed out on her, subbed her out. Look, then she throws the clipboard down. Throws the clipboard. Okay. Don't sign no epic deal, Caitlin Clark. Get the fuck out of Indiana. Leave this clown show of an organization.
That clipboard slam you just saw, that happened with 6 minutes and 30 seconds left in the first quarter. Caitlin Clark had just put up 2 points, 3 assists and a rebound. The Fever were up 8-4 and Stephanie White yanked her star player off the floor. By the time Clark checked back in, Indiana was down 17-10 and the game had completely flipped. This wasn't a routine substitution, this was a statement, and it might have just destroyed the most important coaching relationship in the WNBA.
Pay attention to this.
Do you guys feel like any of the officiating rule changes are impacting how you're able to play as a team defensively?
Officiating wasn't my problem tonight.
The officiating wasn't my problem tonight. You see what her problem was. It's that damn trash-ass head coach, Stephanie White. Fucking blinking all weird like you on drugs. Get her out of here, bro. Get her out of here. Caitlin Clark said it. The refs what? Caitlin Clark had 5 fouls. Normally, she talked greasy about the refs. She let it be known.
Pay attention to what Caitlin Clark didn't say in that press conference. A reporter asked her directly about officiating changes impacting the team's defensive play. Standard question, safe answer would be to talk about adjustments, maybe mention a few fouls. Instead, Clark looked straight into the camera and said 5 words that should terrify Indiana's front office. Officiating wasn't my problem tonight. She picked up 5 fouls in that game against Portland. Normally, she'd have plenty to say about the refs, but she made it crystal clear where her frustration was actually directed.
I guess you guys started on an 8-2 run, and then after Portland took timeout, kind of just flipped the script. Just what changed, either on their end or on your end?
I just thought they were the hungrier team.
No, what changed was you took Caitlin Clark out with 6 minutes and 30 seconds left in the fucking first quarter. That's what changed. She had 2 points, 3 rebounds, 2 points, 3 assists, and a rebound. We up 8-4. You put her back in when we down 17-10. Whole game flipped upside down. Turned into an all-out shit show by the time Caitlin Clark got back in. What are you talking about?
Here's the context everyone needs to understand. Stephanie White came to Indiana with a specific reputation. She coached at Vanderbilt from 2016 to 2021, where she posted a 46-83 record before being let go. In the WNBA, she won a championship with the Fever back in 2012 as a player, then coached them from 2015 to 2016 with mixed results. She spent the last few years as an assistant with the Connecticut Sun, hitching her wagon to a championship-caliber team to rebuild her resume. The Indiana ownership brought her back specifically because of her history with the organization. But here's what nobody calculated. What happens when an old-school coach with something to prove gets paired with a generational talent who's already bigger than the franchise?
Assists in the first 3 minutes of the game, then both her and Aaliyah checked out, I think, around the 6:30 mark. Then Portland went on a 13-2 run. Just what was the reasoning for checking them out, or did either of them request a sub?
Well, AB's still on a minutes restriction, so she's coming out. And typically that's around the same time that we've been taking Caitlin out.
Why, though? Why? Why can't you go game by game and figure it out? Why is it that no matter how she's doing, she has to come out with 6.5 minutes left in the first quarter? Why? Why? This is that old guard dumb stuff. This lady is a bum. This lady.
Now watch Stephanie White try to justify that substitution pattern. She says it's typical to pull Caitlin Clark at the 6:30 mark of the first quarter. Typical based on what? Clark had 3 assists in the first 2 minutes of that game. The offense was flowing. The Fever had an early lead. And White's explanation is that Aaliyah Boston was on a minutes restriction, so Clark had to come out too because they didn't have another ball handler. Think about what that actually means. The coach is admitting she doesn't trust anyone else on the roster to handle the ball for 3 minutes. That's not a substitution pattern, that's a roster construction failure. And she's punishing her best player for it. The only exception White mentioned, Golden State. She kept Clark in longer against the Valkyries because, and I quote, "We didn't feel comfortable in that environment without another ball handler on the floor." So in a hostile road environment, Clark stays in. But at home against Portland, where you need to build early momentum, she sits. The logic doesn't track.
So she's coming out. And typically that's around the same time that we've been taking Caitlin out before. We didn't in Golden State just because, quite honestly, we didn't Raven in that environment without another ball handler on the floor. So that's been our typical substitution pattern.
It's a trash-ass substitution pattern, Stephanie. It's trash. You are trash.
And kind of on that as well, Caitlin picked up her fourth foul, had to come out in the third. Raven had her fourth foul in the third as well. Just how did that affect your point guard rotation, losing those ball handlers?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's tough when you have your primary ball handlers that are,
Here's where this gets personal. That reporter asked what changed after Indiana's strong start, and Stephanie White said Portland was the hungrier team with better competitive spirit. She's standing at a podium, talking to media, and essentially calling out her team's effort. That's coaching malpractice. You don't throw your players under the bus publicly, especially when you're the one who made the tactical decisions that cost them the game. Caitlin Clark gave you 3 assists in 2 minutes. You pulled her. Portland went on a 13-2 run. That's not about hunger. That's about rotation management. And then White tried to blame foul trouble. She said it's tough when your primary ball handlers are in foul trouble because it affects rotations and creates opportunities for offensive rebounds. But here's the problem with that explanation. The damage was already done before the foul trouble started. The game was lost in that first quarter when Clark was sitting on the bench watching Portland build momentum. The fouls came later because Indiana was playing from behind and pressing defensively. Cause and effect. White created the cause, then complained about the effect.
I am freaking pissed right now. I am pissed off. Caitlin Clark, Stephanie White crashed out on Caitlin Clark on the bench and benched her throughout this game. That is what happened. We got footage of Stephanie White crashing out and benching Caitlin Clark. Stephanie White, who the hell you think you are? You was a bum. They ran your sorry ass out of Vanderbilt. They ran you out of there and fired your sorry ass. You was a bum. You haven't won nothing in the WNBA. You've been trying to hitch your wagon to being an assistant for a championship team. Your sorry ass haven't done nothing. Who the hell you think you are to be talking to Caitlin Clark like this? We got to get into it, man. Welcome to Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the channel, hit that bell notification, and hype the...
That opening rant you just heard represents something bigger than one angry fan. It represents a growing divide in how people view this Indiana Fever situation. On one side, you have traditional basketball people who believe in coaching hierarchy, rotations, and earning your minutes. On the other side, you have people who watched Caitlin Clark break every college basketball viewership record, bring unprecedented attention to women's basketball, and generate more revenue for the WNBA in one season than most players do in entire careers. And they're watching a coach with a losing record at Vanderbilt treat her like she's a rookie who needs to be humbled. The business reality is unavoidable here. Caitlin Clark is scheduled to become a free agent after the 2025 season. She's eligible for a contract extension that could be the largest in WNBA history. Indiana has exclusive negotiating rights, but that doesn't mean she has to sign. And if you're Clark's agent, you're watching this Portland game, watching that clipboard slam, watching your client get benched during a competitive stretch, and you're taking notes. Because leverage in contract negotiations doesn't just come from stats, it comes from dysfunction.
because we were in rotation.
I don't even want to look at this piece of garbage anymore. I don't even want to look at you, you piece of trash. I don't even want to look at you. You got some nerve talking to Caitlin Clark like this, snatching her out of the game, throwing the clipboard down. Who the f do you think you are? You are a bum. You are a bum. You are a piece of garbage of a coach, man. This is crazy, man. Caitlin Clark has got to get out of Indiana. Caitlin Clark has to get out of Indiana immediately, bro. I don't care how she got to do it. Call your agent.
Let's talk about what actually happened in this game, because the details matter. Caitlin Clark checked out at 6:30 in the first quarter with Indiana leading 8-4. She had been on the floor for 3.5 minutes. In that time, she recorded 2 points, 3 assists, and 1 rebound. The Fever's offense was clicking. Then she sat for the next 4.5 minutes. When she checked back in at 2 remaining in the first quarter, Portland had gone on a 13-2 run and led 17-10. That's a 13-point swing in 4.5 minutes. The game was effectively decided in that stretch. Stephanie White's explanation was that this is the typical time she subs Clark out. But if you go back and watch the Golden State game from earlier in the season, Clark played significantly longer stretches in the first quarter. White admitted as much, saying they kept her in because they didn't feel comfortable without another ball handler in that road environment. So the substitution pattern isn't actually typical at all. It's situational, which means White made a choice against Portland. She chose to prioritize her predetermined rotation over game flow and momentum. That's a coaching decision, and it backfired spectacularly. Here's what makes this even more problematic. After the game, multiple beat reporters noted that Clark's body language on the bench was noticeably different than usual. She wasn't engaged with teammates during timeouts. She wasn't standing and cheering during defensive stops. She was sitting, arms crossed, staring at the floor. That's not pouting. That's someone who's checked out mentally because they don't trust the decision-making around them. And when your franchise player stops believing in the system, you don't have a system anymore. You have a countdown to free agency. The foul trouble excuse doesn't hold up under scrutiny either. Yes, Clark picked up her 4th foul early in the 3rd quarter, but she'd already been in and out of the game multiple times by then due to White's rotation. The 4th foul came at 7:42 in the 3rd quarter with Indiana down by 15. At that point, the game was already out of reach. Clark was pressing defensively because her team was getting blown out, and pressing leads to fouls. But the reason they were getting blown out traces back to that 1st quarter substitution. Everything that happened after was a consequence of that initial decision. Stephanie White has coached professional basketball for parts of 9 seasons across 2 different stints with Indiana and her time at Vanderbilt. Her overall record is below 500. She's never won a championship as a head coach. She's never developed a player into an all-star. Her claim to fame is winning a title as a player in Toj 12 and being a Fever legend from her playing days. That gives her credibility with the organization and the older fan base. But it doesn't give her credibility with Caitlin Clark, who was 11 years old when White won that championship and probably couldn't have picked her out of a lineup before this season started. This is the fundamental tension that's tearing apart the Indiana Fever right now. The organization hired Stephanie White because they wanted someone who understood Fever culture and could bring back the glory days. But Caitlin Clark doesn't care about Fever culture from 2012. She cares about winning now, playing in a system that maximizes her abilities, and being treated like the generational talent she is. Those two visions are incompatible, and based on that clipboard slam and that post-game press conference, they're heading toward an inevitable breaking point. The comparison to other WNBA coaching situations is instructive here. Look at how Las Vegas handles Aja Wilson. Look at how New York manages Brianna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu. Look at how Connecticut developed their young core. The best teams in this league build their systems around their best players. They don't force their best players into rigid systems designed for role players. Stephanie White is coaching like it's 2015, when she could implement her preferred rotations and expect everyone to fall in line. But this isn't 2015. This is 2025, and her best player has more leverage than any WNBA rookie in history. Here's what Indiana's front office needs to understand. Caitlin Clark doesn't need the WNBA. The WNBA needs Caitlin Clark. She could play overseas for triple her current salary. She could pursue opportunities in broadcasting or business that would pay more than a max WNBA contract. She could walk away from professional basketball entirely and still have a more lucrative career than 90% of WNBA players ever will. The only reason she's in Indiana is because that's where the draft sent her. But after 2025, she gets to choose. And if the choice is between staying with a coach who benches her during competitive stretches or exploring other options, which way do you think that decision goes? The ownership group has a decision to make, and they need to make it soon. Either you're building around Caitlin Clark, or you're not. If you are, then Stephanie White's substitution patterns and coaching philosophy need to change immediately. If you're not, then you're accepting that your franchise player will leave in free agency and take all that revenue, all that attention, and all those fans with her. There's no middle ground here. You can't keep both a coach who wants to run 2015 rotations and a player who's living in 2025 reality. So here's the question for Indiana Fever fans. Was breaking those stories worth it? Was maintaining Stephanie White's rigid coaching philosophy worth alienating the most important player in franchise history? Because that's the trade-off that's happening right now. And based on Caitlin Clark's body language on that bench, based on her pointed comments in the press conference, based on the way this relationship is deteriorating in real time, the Fever are about to find out that you can't have it both ways. You can't treat a generational talent like a role player and expect her to stick around when she has other options. Drop a comment and let me know, should Indiana fire Stephanie White before this gets worse, or is Caitlin Clark overreacting to normal coaching decisions? Because this relationship is headed somewhere, and it's not toward a contract extension. Make sure you like and subscribe for more WNBA coverage, because this story is far from over.